Hey, good morning, everyone. This is going to be a tutorial on OpenClaw, and it's going to be put on by GenAIPI. Hey there, my name's Brantley. I am the Chief AI Officer for the General AI Proficiency Institute, or otherwise known as GenAIPI. You can find us at genaipi.org. And OpenClaw is very famous right now. It's getting a lot of headlines, and why is that? And today I want to get this tutorial started off. It's going to show you how to deploy your OpenClaw using a virtual machine and to be able to have it accessible to you 24/7 and get it kind of running and have it maybe build its own skill. We'll have that kind of in the tutorial as well. But first, a little bit of theory. Theory is always important when you're learning about something that's new and you're trying to understand what it is and how it works. And so I thought it would behoove us to go with a little bit of OpenClaw History 101 to start us off. And so for those that do not know, OpenClaw was not always named OpenClaw. You may have heard it with different names. Actually, one of the very first names that it came out with was actually Warelay, which not a lot of people, unless you get really nerdy into it, you wouldn't know that that's what it was called. But it was it was basically Peter Steinberger, who's the creator of OpenClaw. He started it as just an AI assistant that he was kind of just creating, and it had a channel or a gateway or a channel at that point with WhatsApp. I think is what was one of the first ones that he kind of created. It worked on WhatsApp, and he could talk to it. And it was called Warelay. And then, as time went on, the project got bigger, more open source. He kind of kept working on it. And then it changed its name to Clawd with a W because he's always had this like lobster theme to it, which you've probably seen, all the lobster stuff going on. And so, it changed its name to ClawBot or Claw or Clawd with like a W and a D. And then, so it's like Claude plus Claw because he was, I think, using Anthropic's models for it, which is Claude. And so it was kind of like called Claude or ClawBot, kind of like that. And anyways, then as the project got bigger, Claude and ClawBot is very similar to Claude, the actual model of Anthropic. And so Anthropic said, hey, do you mind reconsidering changing your name, because it's people are confusing it with our product. And so he changed it at that point. Everybody that was working on it, including Peter and his whoever was on the team at the time, or if it was a smaller group, it was still an open source project, which means it's free for everybody, which is awesome when people and companies do that. They changed it to Moltbot, I think. Yes, Moltbot. And this was like, crustaceans molt when they shed one form and birth into a new form. So that was kind of still going with the lobster kind of crustacean theme. So it changed to Moltbot for a very short time period. And then finally they landed on the name that it has now today, which is OpenClaw. And OpenClaw is basically open source. It's free for everyone. And then Claw, of course, maintaining the lobster theme. So that was kind of the whole movement of it. You may have heard of a software called Moltbook right about here. Somebody came up. I can't remember who made Moltbook, but basically it's like the Facebook for AI bots, like where they could go create their own account, and it was supposedly, no humans involved, which we know that that's pretty false at this point. I mean, there's probably some actual usage of just AI bots in Moltbook, but it's very easy to spoof and pretend you're an AI bot if you're just knowledgeable as a software engineer or as a coder. You could totally spoof the website and pretend to be an AI agent, even though you're not. And of course, people were prompting their AI agents to go in here and talk about all kinds of stuff. So there's no guarantee that anything in Moltbook came just from an AI agent. It had to, at least initiate somewhere with a human. And that's something I want to explain here. OpenClaw is pretty new. This OpenClaw kind of was birthed, I guess, in November of 2025. So November of 2025, and at the time of this recording, it's March 24th, 2026. So, it hasn't been around for long, 4 or 5 months. And this was when it was just Peter's little kind of side project at the time. Every great thing starts as a small function that works. And so now it's been built up to what OpenClaw is today, and now Meta owns it. Meta bought OpenClaw, if you're not aware of that. Meta basically, well, not necessarily, I guess they own the right of OpenClaw because they brought Peter Steinberger onto their team. I'm not exactly sure how all the legalities work behind it, but Peter owned and created OpenClaw. Now he's with Meta, so technically I guess Meta has some claim to OpenClaw at this point in time. But it is still open source. It's completely free. You can go to the GitHub repository and see the framework, how it works. You can even, if you're a software engineer, you can go help improve it and write code for it, which is awesome. It's a community project at this point. So needless to say, let's do a little bit of what is OpenClaw compared to other AIs. I mean, you have so many models out there, so many headlining models and companies, or not so many companies. I guess there's 3 or 4, but so you have things like Anthropic, and they own models like Claude, which is kind of their AI. There's Opus, and there's Sonnet. These are all models, by the way. I guess Claude is kind of their agent, I guess, is how you could say that. Maybe like this. And so Opus is like a model of theirs. Sonnet is a model of theirs. They also have Haiku, which is kind of like their cheaper, smaller model. And then you have a company like OpenAI, which obviously is the owners of ChatGPT. So they have the ChatGPT models, and they've been coming out bigger and smarter over time. You also have Google that joined the race, and they have models like Gemini. Everybody's kind of familiar with Gemini. Gemini is now kind of embedded in all the Google tools, and that's one of their flagship models. I think the most recent one is Gemini 3.5, I think. So you have the Gemini models, which are Google's, and then of course you have XAI, which is Elon Musk's team, and they have their Grok models. So, I could go on. There's a lot of open source free models that are built by other companies that are also kind of competing and saying that open source can also be very powerful, which is true. These are kind of the flagship models that everybody sees and is familiar with. So that's why I'm kind of saying them. And what's the difference between OpenClaw and just getting on ChatGPT or Grok or Google and talking to Gemini or the ChatGPT models, or Anthropic and talking to Opus? What's the difference? Well, the difference is, OpenClaw allows you to have an agentic framework. So Anthropic kind of does this with their Claude Code. They have an offering called Claude Code, and that's kind of an agentic model. And now it even has what's called computer use, where it can actually use your personal computer. So you can use models within Claude, within Anthropic. Of course, you're housed there at that point. If you choose to use their computer use and their models, you have to. I don't think you can openly plug in any other models there. So it kind of limits you a little bit, but Anthropic has really great models, so you wouldn't be doing a bad thing using Claude Code. And so there's other agentic kind of models out there. There's also Manus is an agentic agent. You've probably heard of Manus.ai. It's also an agentic agent. It does tasks. It actually performs multi-step tasks for you and is able to access third-party softwares if you give it access and do work for you. That's kind of what an AI agent is. And so these are kind of all housed under the AI agent, kind of title here. So we'll put like agentic AI. And so, yeah, so you have your models, up here, your models that are kind of like chat models, I guess, at this point. They can do some cool things. They can answer questions. They can, do cool stuff for you. But, that's basically the limit of what they can do. You can connect them to some things. They can write your emails. They can read your emails, some of that stuff, depending. But really, they kind of are housed in a chat form. You give it a chat, it chats back to you. Maybe it'll give you a document or some kind of output, but it's not really a work stream. You can't really just let it sit for hours at a time and have it work. And that's where agentic AI is coming in. And that's why OpenClaw is such a big deal, because it's kind of pushing people towards that direction and showing them what's possible. Peter did an awesome thing showing us kind of what's possible, and that we can make these on our own as well and not just have to, rely on big companies like Manus. Perplexity also has an agentic AI that they call Perplexity Computer. Manus's is Manus Computer, actually. So, very similar names to not confuse people, but these are kind of agentic AIs that are housed by the parent company, these companies, and then you pay to use them. And you can connect them to different softwares, you can connect them to your email, everything, and just have it do work for you for hours at a time, theoretically. OpenClaw is this, so you have OpenClaw now, but it's open source. So it is open source, it is free, you can download it and install it on a local machine or on a virtual machine, which is what this tutorial is going to be about. And it runs 24/7, and then you have full control over it. And you can choose what models you use within it. If you want to use some Anthropic models for certain things, or you want to use a ChatGPT model for certain things, you can. You can just plug them in with an API key. It's very open to what it can be, and it can be customizable, which is the coolest thing. So that's what agentic AI is. That's what OpenClaw is. It is not AI that just runs on its own and does whatever. I mean, I'm going to show you kind of the inner workings of OpenClaw here soon, and you're going to see kind of what exactly it is. It's not just like this sentient being of AI that just works for you. It does have to be set up. It has to have rules. It has to be given set instructions. It has to have skills built for it to be able to do what it does, and that comes from a human or some instructions. And so it's not just kind of this like black box of sentient, AI-ness that a lot of people are claiming it to be. So hope that helps. This is OpenClaw history and OpenClaw information 101, and then we're going to jump into the next part of the tutorial where I'm going to show you more under the hood of what OpenClaw is, just so you can understand it even more.